In this video, I want to take a look at a game which I played against a much lower rated opponent, and because this is a correspondence game, my advice would be not to play this particular opening because, well, you have a lot of time to think about your moves, and also being a correspondence game, you have the ability to analyze by moving the pieces and just look at different lines. So the Danish Gambit, there's two ways of playing it. One is to take with a knight or bishop c4, which is what my opponent did. It is a very aggressive opening and it can be quite dangerous. So if I were facing this in a blitz game, I would be a little bit more intimidated because, well, it's pretty easy to miss certain tactics that white has. And, well, here I took the pawn. You might say it's rather greedy, and maybe it is, but because it's not played at the highest level, I just don't think that white has sufficient compensation. So after takes, here already I played a move which maybe is not the best. Bishop check. I just wanted to simplify trade pieces because I figured the less pieces and the more simplify the position, the less chances I have of missing something. And here my opponent played knight d2. So while I was analyzing this game and looking at the theory of this line, knight d2 not the best move. Better is king f1. And here, well, I just continue to play not the best moves. Again, just trying to simplify the position. And here, I think this is pretty much the blunder that I made in the game. I don't think I made any other blunders besides this move, knight f6. My opponent played queen f4, but e5 is pretty much winning for white, because what do you do? Queen e7 also loses, but I didn't even consider that. If I had gotten this position, I think knight g8 is a pretty sad move to make, but if you play something like knight e4 or knight g4, it looks pretty scary. So after this, I think bishop f7 check just wins. Check, and, well, you're gonna win the knight. The king is exposed, and there's really not how does black do anything? Let's say here you take, better development, queen is centralized. In a lot of lines in this opening, white castles queenside, and there's practically no development. This king cannot castle anymore, and yeah, this is just bad for black. And if you play knight g4, pretty much anything is winning. I think knight f3 is winning, h3 is winning. So if you go back with the knight, there is like no development. So you have 3 pieces out. This should be winning for white. And the computer line gives a pretty nice line. Knight f3, let's say knight h6 in order to castle. I suppose knight e7 is also playable. There is this fantastic move, e6. And you might say, well, I trust my opponent, so I'll just castle. Pawn takes, and after knight takes, white is completely winning. It may not be so obvious how exactly you win, but pretty much any move is winning. Like the top 5 moves at least are winning for white. So back here, you might be thinking, well, why can't you take the pawn? Well, if you take, I believe you trade queens, and the rook is hanging, the knight's hanging, so if you go here, you lose the knight. And if you take with the other pawn, again, you just take here. And this is just done. But instead, my opponent played this move, queen f4. And, well, after queen e7, I have 2 threats. One is to take here with check, which means we would trade queens. The other one is this fork with queen b4 check. So my opponent defended the pawn, but now you're dropping up one of the bishops. Queen d2, the best move, but now I take this bishop, and now it's just a matter of time, as long as I don't blunder anything. But my opponent played actually pretty well. So just to show the finish, and here I'm not sure about this move from a practical point of view, because it allows me to trade pieces. My opponent sacrificed a pawn and then blundered a piece, so probably not the best way, and not this move. I understand that maybe there's not that many ideas for white, but I think centralizing one of the rooks would have been a better choice. And, well, now I'm just gonna push the pawns on the queen side and make a queen. Basically, that's my idea. And this is actually a really good move, because now my knight looks ridiculous. And this pawn is kind of a pain, and I can't really get rid of it, because if I ever try to trade it, so let's say, well, now I've just opened up this bishop. Now I know that the queen is hanging, but just to illustrate the point. And here I was looking for a way to just get my queen out of this square and put the knight here without my opponent sacrificing the pawn just to open up this bishop along this diagonal, because obviously if that were to happen, then there is a checkmating threat, so it could get a little scary for me. And now this move with the idea of just putting more pressure down the G file with the checkmating threat. So my opponent obviously does not want to trade queens. And here I am attacking the rook as well as the queen. But the queen is protected, so I don't know if this was the best move. There is something to be said for a queen e1, because he took, and yes, I have the double isolated pawns, but when you're down a piece, that's just not enough. So check, and now I get the knight here, finally blockading the pawn so that this bishop is pretty much useless as an attacking piece. And finally my opponent took the pawn. So bishop here just defending h7. Not because I really care about the pawn, but the pawn is useful for two things. One is, if this pawn drops, then there's ideas of h4 and just h5 and trying to make a queen. But also, if the rook ever takes this pawn, then there are potential checkmating ideas if you can reroute this bishop to, say, the g5 square. Or you could check first, and if you could get the bishop, say, to e1, first you can check, and after king e7, then bishop a4 would be checkmate, because again this pawn is pretty much restricting both rooks and the pawns. So even though it's restricting my opponent's bishop, it's also restricting both of my rooks, which is not a bad deal for just a pawn. And now f4, and I'm going to push my pawns. And well, this move potentially allows me to trade rooks and maybe take a pawn. I mean, I'm willing to give back material just to simplify the position. Check, which again is a very good move. And now my knight is pinned. And I want to get rid of this bishop so that my knight can move. And yeah, this move not the best move, because now I have a double attack and I get to trade. And now I just don't think that white has enough. With the bishop, yeah, maybe, but now that was pretty, I mean, look at the evaluation. And yeah, now the white pawns are just not fast enough. White pawns are getting ready to queen. And after this move, I knew I was winning, because you cannot stop me from queening. and checkmate. So yeah, interesting game, and kudos to my opponent for not resigning. And I mean, the game lasted 50 moves, which is a lot considering that he blundered a piece on move 10. Wow, that's putting up a fight for sure. I know a lot of players would have resigned a lot sooner than that. Anyway, if you like the video, do give the video a thumbs up and share and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next video.